My name is Alexa Kebalo Hughes, President-Elect of the Greater Hartford Association of Realtors. We thank you all for joining us for this very timely update with Bob Goldberg, the Chief Executive Officer of the National Association of Realtors. We're looking forward to a great discussion today, accompanied by our CEO, Holly Callanan, who will be monitoring the Q&A for any questions that you may have. We are recording this webinar and will make it available in the newsletter and through our social media channels. If we can't get to your questions today, we will certainly get back to you right away. Before I introduce Bob, I'd like to share that we are joined today by one of our fellow GHAR members, Kevin Sears from Springfield, Massachusetts, who some of you may know. Hi, Kevin.
Good afternoon.
So Kevin has been endorsed by both Massachusetts and the New England Realtors as candidate for NAR officer, specifically first vice president for 2023, which would lead to NAR presidency in 2025. His campaign will begin in earnest next year, and the election will be held in May of 2022. We wanted to introduce him here today so you can say hello at our next GHAR event in person. Thanks for being here today, Kevin.
Thank you very much, President-Elect Alexa and Holly. And Bob, it's great seeing you again.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being here, Kev.
Awesome. So now I'd like to welcome Bob Goldberg to our program. So Bob has been CEO of the National Association of Realtors for the last 3 years. During his tenure, Bob has focused on transforming NAR and leading efforts to put our 1.4 million members first. Today, Bob is going to share some of those efforts as it pertains to the supporting members during the pandemic, as well as how NAR has addressed the challenges of the day. We're pleased to have him join us. So Bob, before we get started, I understand you have some special connection with the Greater Hartford area. Please do tell.
Yeah, I do. In my prior life, I just celebrated literally about 2 weeks ago my 25th anniversary with NAR. My role at NAR has been running our for-profit subsidiaries as well as running all the business development and marketing before I became CEO. But prior to that life, I worked for the largest MLS vendor in the country, a company called PRC Realty Systems, and actually was involved with the sale of the MLS systems in Hartford and other places as well, Litchfield, Greenwich, Connecticut. But Hartford was the board that I used to go up there all the time to. I was probably in Hartford every other week as we provided the MLS services at the time and worked very closely with the Hartford board and the then current leadership and one of Holly's early predecessors. So I think, what is it, the airport, I can't remember the name, was it Bradley or what?
Bradley.
Yeah, I remember many a trip into Bradley Airport and used to stay in downtown Hartford and not too far from the board itself. So it's always great getting around my old comrades, maybe is the right word, from the Hartford area, but we certainly enjoyed it. And it's always great to be able to engage with our members, and looking forward to today's chat.
Excellent. Well, we, again, are so glad to have you, and we thank you for all that you've done on the national level for us here. So, Bob, we're hearing from our members that after a very rough late winter into spring, they've seen a very robust recovery in June, July, and August. Is this accurate? And what is NAR's role in the market's rebound? And what is their continued role today?
Yeah, actually very spot on. You know, when the market took such a massive hit when the pandemic hit back in March, we were, like the rest of the industry, just really caught off guard on how do we deal with something of the magnitude of a pandemic. I know, and I'll give a shout out to my friend Kevin Sears, who was actually on my on the search committee and the selection committee when I was fortunate enough to get the CEO job. And as Kevin will tell you, when I was interviewing, not one question was asked of me 3 years ago, how am I, if you get CEO, how are you going to lead through a pandemic? So it was a challenge for all of us, folks that are in leadership of all the respective associations, as well at the national level. So we worked real hard when the pandemic hit. We worked with the Department of Homeland Security. Now people ask, what's that got to do with everything? Well, Homeland Security created a master list of businesses and services in this country that would be deemed essential. That was a federal way of looking at what would be important. So fortunately, the state associations working hand in hand with us used that list. We were fortunate to be able to convince Homeland Security that real estate was an essential business. So the respective state associations, Cindy and her team in the leadership, as well as local associations, convinced states, the governors and their administrations that real estate is an essential service. And so it took a while for certain states to come around and their governors and their administrations, but they did. The point in all of this is that the marketplace, which took such a nosedive, it's what we call a V recovery. It dropped like this and it went right back up. So the August numbers that just came out were again a record real estate sales. So post, excuse me, I don't say post-pandemic, but certainly when the crash happened over the March, April, May timeframes, the real estate sales have actually exceeded what it was pre-pandemic. That's how hot the market is nationally. And so we continue to push hard. The biggest challenge we have in our industry, and I think everybody knows this, is there's just not enough inventory. So with record low interest rates, low inventory, demand is high, supply is low, that's the problem. And we still need more inventory. But we continue to work hard with the administration. We work hard with, we did very much have a hand, first and foremost, driving what was going to be in the CARE stimulus package for our members, and are still working with them. So it has recovered. We got to just solve the inventory problem and get more houses out there and make more available for folks. And that's not an easy thing to overcome, but we'll all keep pushing.
That's it. And it's so great to hear. I mean, we're experiencing the same thing across the board in Connecticut. And I think to your point, it's up to us as realtors to really speak with people in the community that, listen, it's a great time to make a move for people. So I really appreciate all that you guys are doing in that regard, so we can keep it moving for people. People are getting to homes that maybe better suit their needs and really taking advantage of the interest rates. So that's great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So Bob, can you talk to us about the member engagement and outreach during the pandemic? And what do you anticipate things will look like going forward?
Yeah, it's interesting because when the pandemic hit, the first question I get asked a lot is, well, gosh, as bad as this is, are there any silver linings? And I will tell you that for our entire leadership team, our staff, our member outreach has expanded far beyond what I would have ever thought about. When you think about events like this that we're doing today, virtual platforms have opened up more opportunity for member engagement. And I'll give you an example. And Kevin knows this when I was interviewing for this position. I felt it was so important that the CEO of NAR and our leadership of NAR be so much more engaged to listen to what our members have to say. And so I came in, touting, as CEO, I'm going to be engaged on social media. You'll see on my background, I have a LinkedIn address up there, but you can follow me on LinkedIn, and you can also on my Facebook CEO page. But the point was, I have tens of thousands of followers on Facebook and LinkedIn, as do many of our leaders. And I thought, well, there's the magic answer, because now I'm engaging firsthand with our membership. I'm responding. In 3 years, I've had over 50,000 emails, LinkedIn messages, Facebook messages, and the like, and I personally respond to all of them. And I was like, that's the answer, until the pandemic hit. And guess what we learned? Virtual engagement has been far, far greater than any social media has been. So I'll give you an idea. Our leadership have collectively talked to several 100,000 members since the pandemic started. We have more engagement today than we've ever had in the history of NAR. I'll give you just a couple of examples, Alexa, to give you some perspective. Our leadership in NAR, we did a Facebook Live event several months ago to all of our members. And we had 18,000 that participated live at that moment. Do you know over 100,000 of our members watched it within 2 days? Wow. So that's incredible. Or look at our mid-year, our legislative meetings, where we go on Capitol Hill and make sure the representatives on the House and the Senate and the administration know our positions and what we're advocating for. We usually get 8,000, maybe 9,000 in DC in May for that meeting. We did it virtually, and we had over 28,500 people of our members signed up and engaged and participating. So almost 3.5 to 4 times the engagement. And guess what? We were just as effective, and some might argue, we were more effective in lobbying that week because we didn't limit the lobbying to just 1 week. So we've had all throughout the country virtual engagements, virtual town halls with Congress folks, with senators, with administration officials, with our members who are their constituents. And they don't have to happen during that 1 week in May. There was a big one that we just held a couple of weeks ago in one of the states that we participated in with their US Senator, and had more people being able to express key items and positions that were important to real estate than we typically do during that week. So I think the point is the outreach, not only in social media, but really giving us a chance to hear more what our members have to say. I think that's the baseline that has allowed us to have better engagement. And I think you'll hear me talk about, because you hear everybody saying, well, that's going to be the new normal. I now call it the now normal. It's not new anymore. This is going to be the way we will engage with our members, NAR working with our state and local associations and our members, even post-pandemic. Now, we'll do meetings in person. Let's hope we can get to that faster and sooner. But we will actually extend that engagement far more on virtual platforms like this. And I always question, I sort of shake my head, there was nothing unique when the pandemic hit with how we were using technology. We just didn't engage in using. So for example, every week or every 2 weeks, I have a meeting with all of our state association executives virtually. My staff, government affairs directors, have meetings weekly with the respective government affairs directors around the country. And you sort of scratch your head and say, why weren't we doing that before the pandemic? Because we could have engaged and been more involved versus just having an in-person meeting 2 or 3 times a year. So I think we've been able to elevate the game in such a way that works for everybody and allows us to communicate more directly with our members. And again, I credit the Hartford Association for what you're doing right here. This is a great way to engage and communicate and give updates.
We appreciate that, Bob. And really, it's funny because people do not want to step out of their comfort zone. To your point, we always had this technology. And now people are realizing, let's lean into this. Even as things become more normal, this is a phenomenal tool we all have in our tool belt. So speaking of tools, can you tell us more about the services that NAR has made available to our members to help them navigate, as you say, the new now normal?
Right. Well, one of the things I give a lot of credit to our staff and most definitely our leadership, who we wanted to make sure we were not tone deaf and that we were paying attention. When this pandemic hit in early March, we immediately went into full engagement of what tools and services can we provide our members, because so many people were hurting. When real estate was going 150 miles an hour and went to zero, we were hearing it loud and clear. So we wanted to get ahead of it. So we immediately set up a coronavirus hotline, which I'll cover with you in a minute what that's all about. We started as I mentioned earlier, our calls with our state associations. We have even done them as well with our local associations, our weekly government affairs directors meetings, our comm directors. We started putting out a report called the Weekly Resiliency Report. If you look at our social media, we have what was called the Pivot in Place video. Now that helps in a lot of ways as communicating and educating. But what was most important that I felt we needed to do was, how do we bring greater value to our members immediately? Our members are hurting. What can we do to provide them tools that may help them maybe get one more sale or increase their return on investment somehow? So we set up a program that we had brought several years ago called Right Tools Right Now. And I would invite everybody to go to nar.realtor/RTRN. Now let me tell you what that program is. We decided, how do we in essence open up and clear our warehouse of all the great products and services and education that NAR provides? And most of those are all at a cost because education services and the like, and the products are a non-dues revenue for the association to help us provide more products and services for our members. But we said on a good number of these, let's make them free or at our cost or below our cost. So we launched the program in mid-March, again, nar.realtor/RTRN. It has over 425 different products and services and education programs. We've already had over 200,000 of you all take one or more of those products. We change them weekly. We add new things. So almost 700,000 products have been taken. But the most important part of that is that the value proposition is we have provided back to the members, Alexa, over $21 million of value. So if members were paying for those almost 700,000 products and services and education, NAR would have collected $21 million. We gave up all of that and said, let's give it back to the members to help them. So that was a big area. And then I look at one of the other most important things that I give our leadership team credit for moving so fast on this. I brought to them a program that we had worked with before called Members Telehealth. We were trying to do things to provide the health and welfare of our members by providing extra services. So we have a national 24/7 telehealth program where you can talk to a physician 24/7, over 3,000 doctors and specialists that are available. And we make that product available for $7 a month for our members and their entire families, even kids up to 26 years old. What's wonderful about that, we've had in the last 2 months, over 30,000+ of our members have signed up for it with their families. And at $7 a month, it is exactly what it costs NAR. We make no money on that. But we felt it was important to provide some alternatives instead of having to run into an emergency room, unless there's an emergency, but or a doctor's offices for maybe routine things. And these physicians that are part of the members telehealth program can actually prescribe medication and have specialists and the like. So again, it was just another thing that we felt was important to bring as a benefit to the members. So, you know, certainly take advantage and go to that website. We'll probably keep that program going through the end of this year.
That's phenomenal and so timely. And the agility that you guys were able to have as far as putting this in place is amazing. Being able to, as we all know, our favorite word of 2020 is pivot, and being able to provide for our members here is just so crucial. Mm-hmm. So as far as what are some of the top advocacy wins that NAR has achieved this year to help members through this COVID environment, and what is still in the works? Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, well, and Kevin probably, as much as most of the people I know, has been very actively engaged with what we do, certainly with RPAC and what we're doing with our advocacy efforts. I think the first thing I want to say is, you probably, many of you may have seen this, just last week I announced that we had promoted our chief lobbyist, Shannon McGann, to our chief advocacy officer. So Shannon is on my senior executive team. She's the first woman in 110 years to lead our advocacy efforts. She is a superstar in Washington. She's been voted one of the top 30 most powerful women on Capitol Hill. So we were very fortunate 2.5 years ago to snag her. I worked hard in lots of interviews and convinced her that she needed to be at NAR to lead our efforts with the Realtor Party. So Alexa, with your question about, you know, what are some of the advocacy wins, I think it's very important. Again, I think we have certainly one of the top 2 or 3 most powerful political action committees in DC. Our advocacy efforts are well known, and certainly RPAC dollars that have been contributed have helped us. But when the pandemic hit, and because of our influence on the Hill and the relationships that our lobbyists have, and Shannon and all of our team, our fingerprints, and maybe in some cases footprints if we needed to use our feet, have been just all over a lot of the components of the CARES Act, and the components that were even before the CARES. You know, knowing that we are the largest trade association in the world, and that majority of our members, 97, 98%, are independent contractors, we wanted to make sure that the voice of independent contractors were being represented in the stimulus package, because candidly, every other voice was out there and no one thinks about the independent contractor. So we were having conversations to represent the needs of 1099 contractor status type folks. And so we weren't just signing letters and sending them in, which we did do with lots of other organizations, but we also were picking up the phone and doing virtual town halls and meetings, even with Secretary Mnuchin, Labor Secretary Scalia. I was on many of those meetings myself, and we wanted to make sure that we were representing the residential and commercial agents in our industry and our brokers. So some of the wins, like in the CARES package, was that we ensured that independent contractors were eligible for stimulus funds. This was the first time that independent contractors were really included in those kinds of things. So we pushed for the for funding and additional funding in the Paycheck Protection Programs, the EIDL programs, which is the disaster relief funds, including unemployment, for example. When the first unemployment program was being out there, the PUA, the Pandemic Unemployment Insurance, I think it's a PUA, the A is assistance. As all of us know, as independent contractors, unemployment insurance is administered by the state. And what was happening is because independent contractors aren't eligible, they have not been able to do that. So we pushed and worked very hard with the Department of Labor and the Treasury to say, look, you've got to do something in federal support on this. So independent contractors were included. We worked with the DOL, Department of Labor, and the way it works is that, and again, it depends on the respective states, but we were giving a tool to the governors of every state in this country to say, you don't need to worry about these funds coming out of your coffers. The feds behind it, the original $600 program, and the one that's still being debated, that we're still working with them on, allows that a state can contract with the Department of Labor, and that the Department of Labor, through the funds of the Treasury, will provide unemployment assistance to independent contractors. Now, there's lots of rules around it. I give a lot of credit to the respective state associations in this country, because they're the ones that had to take that and go lobby in their respective state capitals to say, look, you've got to be able to help us. So, so every state has been there. We've stood by consumers for supporting forbearance measures. And, you know, even for commercial practitioners and residential, we help secure extended deadlines for the 1031 like-kind exchange opportunity zone programs. All of these are out there. And currently, you know, again, they're still talking about the next stimulus package. So we're working hand in hand again just to make sure that our interests as an industry are being represented. And so just know that we're there hand in hand with our state and local associations doing that.
Yeah, and I have to say, I mean, not only was this a huge win for myself and all of my realtor peers, but also just in the beginning of the pandemic, just reaching out to everyone in my database and all of our contractors and everyone that we do business with, and actually sharing with them the news that the 1099 status is able to have some sort of relief. And in many cases, I was actually the one delivering the news to a lot of people in my network, the non-realtor 1099s.
Right.
So, and the amount of gratitude, you know, not only that we have, you know, I mean, they were just so thrilled, and so many lives have been touched. And I'm so proud to be a realtor. The amazing things that we've been able to accomplish as the largest trade association, it really makes all the difference. It really does.
Yeah, it's a partnership, and we're all in it together. And we fully deployed all of our staff, even though we were and are, for the most part, remote and not working in our central offices. But that was no excuse for us to slow down. And we have been aggressive and will continue to be.
Great. So earlier this year, NAR unveiled its Fair Housing Action Plan called ACT. Can you tell us a little bit more about it, and what can members do now to get involved in building more inclusive communities and promoting fair housing?
Yeah, thank you. You know, fair housing is really the core linchpin of what we're all about. That is our lane as a realtor organization at the local, state, and national level. Our practitioners need to make sure that they're front and center with this. I think most of you probably heard, and I'll cover what ACT means here in a second, but you heard also all the news stories that came out of Long Island in New York. The Newsday did a big expose where they videotaped true discrimination by, in several cases, our members that were pushing people not to buy in a certain area or not showing them homes in a different area. And it became a big news story. And fair housing was being challenged, which is how much do we as an organization truly believe in it? What I'm most proud of, I will tell you, last February, like we said earlier before we started, the months feel like dog years. Because a year ago, November, December, when Vince came in as Vince Malta came in as NAR's president, he, along with our leadership team and myself and our senior staff, said, we're going to double down on fair housing. This is the time. We gotta be serious. Now, this was pre the George Floyd murder. This was pre-Newsday situation. So I hired a gentleman named Brian Green. He is an absolute superstar. He is our director of fair housing. He came from HUD and ran as an undersecretary of HUD fair housing. So we had him on board in December before all this stuff happened. So I'm proud that we weren't reacting to do something. We just knew it was the right thing to do. So Brian came in, we allocated several $1 million. I came to leadership with a plan and I said, let's make this happen. Because if all of you remember, just 2 years ago, we were commemorating the 50th anniversary of the Fair Housing Act. But I think many people have acknowledged, and I'm one of the first ones to say it, there's been a lot of talk about what we got to do, but very little action. It's a lot of puffery in the spirit of candor here. And we felt as a leadership team and staff, let's start doing something about it. Let's make the difference. So when Brian came in, we created a whole fair housing area within our organization. And we created a program called ACT that stands for Accountability, Culture Change, and Training. And some of the key provisions are that it works with our members to educate them about implicit bias. I challenge everybody on here to go to nar.realtor, and Holly can certainly provide you guys and Alexa the link. We have a 45-minute implicit bias video. It is fantastic. And it's something that we now require all of our staff to have to go through, but also we've had tens of thousands of members view it and say it's one of the best things we've done. And coming in November, a month and a half, we're actually providing an online classroom experiential training on implicit bias. That's really the extension of the videotape. It actually allows practitioners to go through real life role playing and to be able to help educate and train them better. We need to do more when we talk about accountability with regards to working with the state licensing boards, which is when things happen, what are we doing to help get them to double down when they see there's discrimination with regards to real estate licensure. And I guess I would also maybe add to this, one of the outputs that we've seen, you'll see very shortly our consumer advertising program. In the next month, you're going to see very heavy broadcast TV, social media, where our ads are going to be dedicated just to fair housing. And they're edgy because it's telling the story of what we need to be. And with a very polarized country and not getting into the politics of, is it right wing, left wing? It's none of that. It's human decency. We're in this business to ensure that there's fair access to housing. It is very much in our lane, and we're going to continue to push that. And I guess, Alexa, the last thing is we were asked by a lot of brokers, can we develop programs to help them, in essence, do self-testing so that they can see somewhat anonymously to see if there's discrimination actually happening with the agents associated with their respective offices. That way, they can help self-correct and be better at what they do. And so we're working right now on those kind of programs that you'll see very, very shortly.
So if you don't mind my interjecting, Bob, I've got a quick question from my point of view. have you done anything different internally to address diversity and inclusion and you know, address it with your staff? Like, how do you bring up that subject and how do you bring that to the forefront within the association?
Yeah, Holly, from a staff perspective, I will tell you, and again, I keep pointing to Kevin because he heard me when I was interviewing. That was one of the core pillars when I came in as CEO that I said, I want to double down as part of the NAR staff culture on diversity. And what's more important is inclusion. You can do diversity programs, but you need to be able to have inclusion to ensure that there's recognition. And so in 3 years, we have made massive changes and improvements to what we do internal with NAR. For example, we developed, we were one of the first to do it, and it's not about pride of ownership here. We had a cross-section of multicultural employees work on a diversity statement that is proudly displayed at nar.realtor. We had them work on it, and it was blessed by over 300 NAR employees that all had their fingerprints on that diversity statement. We've since had lots of state and local associations saying, wow, can we use that? And I'm like, absolutely. You can use it, modify it, whatever you want. It's got to be more than words on a page, though. It's got to be actions in your organization. We worked real hard. And by the way, diversity is more than just color. It's got to be things that, because the color side, we can all see those differences, but it's the other components of protected classes that we need to work with. So we've spent lots of times with programming that help us with things such as gender diversity, sexual orientation, socioeconomic, age, et cetera, et cetera. We cover all of those with programs. And so it has been very successful with openness of people talking, with transparency. We have book clubs of different things we want people to read. We have an online platform called Slack, where employees can tell us what they're seeing and experiencing. And it has been very cathartic. We're up for many awards right now for being one of the most culturally sensitive organizations out there, but it takes work. I will tell you, it just doesn't flip a switch and say you're doing it. And I will tell you, Holly, in all candor, it was a little controversial. We had members like we see now, and this is just maybe my little bit of editorial, but my leadership believes in this. We had people come back and say, why is NAR so focused on this? Well, it's the right thing to do as an employer. Number one, it helps us get the best talent when we're recruiting. But we also see the same thing happening in the industry where people are pushing back against even NAR and what we're all about fairness in housing. And we have found in candor some hate speech that's been posted on social media by our members, which candidly is unacceptable, but there's nowhere to put teeth in it. The Code of Ethics doesn't cover that. The Code of Ethics covers behaviors in a real estate transaction. Right. So we took it upon us. I give Vince and Charlie and John Smaby and all of our leaders just great credit for this. They had the intestinal fortitude. I was going to use another word for it. They had the intestinal fortitude to say, you know what? Let's ask the Professional Standards Committee to take this on and see if there's some modifications to the Code of Ethics that we can apply to bad actors in our membership to say, you don't deserve to wear the R. We had a member, I'm giving an anecdotal, but a member a couple of weeks ago, that was, she had a radio program, and on the radio program on real estate, she used the N-word multiple times, and her broker whacked her. Great.
Jeez.
She's still a realtor though. And guess what? Another broker picked her up, and now the nickname of that brokerage in that town are the racist realtors. We have to have teeth to be able to do something. So you will see professional standards in the November meetings bringing forth more teeth on how to deal to give local associations, Holly, like yourself, state associations, and national ways to say you don't deserve the right to where they are. Now, it's not about you having an opinion on something. We all want free speech to be able to give your opinion. But when you're flat out denigrating people or who they are or what they are, that's not who we are. Cool. And we will make sure that we deal with it. So lots of work on that happening right now.
Thanks, Bob.
No, that's.
And you can tell I'm a little passionate about it because we need, we need as an organization really do what's right for people.
That's right. If we don't do it, who will? You know, as realtors, we're in every corner of every community. It really starts with us. We really can make a huge, huge impact. And I appreciate seeing your level of passion, because that's how we're going to get things done, you know, quite frankly. So thank you. So switching gears just a little bit, what are some of the ways that you see realtors are evolving the way that they practice real estate on a day-to-day during these unprecedented times? And how do you think that will carry forward into the future?
Well, as I mentioned, with all the things that we've been doing in that new now normal, things we've had to do, we've seen it actually very much extend to our practitioners in the industry. Many of you on this video today know how you've had to change your respective businesses. And I really credit our industry. You know, there were some that were what I would say bleeding edge companies that were like, we're going to go all electronic and do this and this. We're doing virtual tours, virtual open houses, electronic closings. That was already happening. But the pandemic forced the industry to accelerate technology adoption faster than anything we've ever seen before. So we hear all the time throughout the country, brokers telling us that they've had purchases happen sight unseen. They've changed how they had to operate with certainly open houses and how COVID's impacted all that. We've had electronic closings, remote online notary, a big deal. So I think the industry has been the leaders of pushing it along, because we have to in order to compete. And you know, credit goes to all the players out here that are making it happen. I will tell you, one of the things that I think where NAR has been extremely helpful in that arena, and it helps today and it helps us in the years coming forward, is that most people don't know this. We have a subsidiary of NAR, excuse me, called Second Century Ventures. Now, it's an independent, wholly owned subsidiary of NAR. I also serve as president and CEO of that. That's what I used to do before I became CEO. And it looks at early stage technology companies and places bets on them, equity investment. I'll bet almost everyone on this call does not know that we have investment in over 100 technology companies. We're equity owners of 100 plus technology companies. We were one of the first investors in DocuSign 10 years ago. We own CentralLock, the lockbox company. We own 2 remote online notary, I shouldn't say we own them, we have equity investment in 2 remote online notary companies, NotaryCam and Notarize. So look at that list, because so many brokers in this industry have adapted those respective companies' technologies. Many of you have probably heard of a company called Box Browning, a great photo imaging company. We found them in Australia. So that's a company that we have an equity position in. The purpose of our investment in those companies was not how much money can NAR make in our subsidiary, even though that may be nice. The real point of that is we want to make sure that we have a seat at that table, that we can influence those technologies to be realtor advocates instead of realtor adversaries. That is what is so important, that we provide the tools, the arrows in the quiver for everybody in our industry to say, look, bring on all those other people. You know, you read about news. I think that's one of the questions I know you guys will probably ask me about what happened with Zillow. But there's all kinds of companies every single day trying to disintermediate our industry. And my personal feeling is, when I came in 3 years ago, and I believe it now, our leadership believes it, is bring them on. Because we have been doing something in our subsidiaries to bring better tools to our members than any one of them can bring. And most of those outside entities don't understand our marketplace. So we need to use this opportunity to keep advancing the technologies, make sure that our voice is heard in those companies, and then give us an opportunity really to be the drivers for what's best in our industry.
Well said. And speaking of Zillow, I have to touch on this a little bit more, Bob. So I really would love to hear NAR's stance on the debut of Zillow Homes. And essentially, how do we think that's going to affect the real estate industry moving forward?
Well, it sort of ties back to my previous comment about bring everybody on. Look, Zillow is like anybody else. There's several 100,000 of our members that already work with them. They are a fierce competitor in many ways to what we're doing with Realtor.com, which is right on their heels. I mean, those are the two top portals in the world. But I guess I look at it this way. It's just another business model. There's many different ones in this industry. Katie uses a term, Katie Johnson, our general counsel, and I love how she says it. It's like, come on in, the water is fine. I mean, people will put their toes in the water. Now, let me just tell you a little bit about Zillow Homes. And I will tell you, I had a conversation with them in the last couple of days before their announcement. They actually called and engaged with me. I know several of their senior people that I used to work with when they were at Realtor.com. And so I said, tell me what this is. So I'll let everybody know I'll tell you what I know, which is the inside that they told me. Now, whether or not you trust it or not is a different issue with what their intentions ultimately may be. Some have called it a Trojan horse, but I will tell you what it is. Zillow Homes is a licensed brokerage in all 50 states. They operate, and I'll pull my notes out here because it came from my call with them yesterday. They're in 18 states right now physically operating, and they're in 23 markets. Their intent with Zillow Homes, which is an independent subsidiary from Zillow online portal, is exactly what it is. Yes, it is a brokerage. What I thought was a unique nuance is that all the folks that are going to work with them, especially like an iBuyer, where they come in and they offer the seller who has expressed interest in an offer for their property, those folks will all now be realtors, 100%. They will join the local association, the state and national associations. That brokerage will join MLS. They will be like RE/MAX or anybody else, they say. The employee, they're not going to poach other people because all they simply want is an employee. And it could be almost like a transaction desk manager in an office who simply is, when a consumer calls them and says, I would entertain an offer, this person simply puts together the purchase offer to give to the consumer. And they're a realtor doing it. And now, that could be someone's executive assistant is licensed and gets this. They just want to control what is being told to the consumer with their evaluators that give a price based on an algorithm. So that's their role on that. They don't get commissions. They're an employee. So they're not a 1099. They are a W-2 employee as a realtor. So now, I don't think they're going to go on any mass hiring spree of bringing realtors in and making them employees. Their example to me was they might have one or two of these people for the Chicago marketplace. And again, it's just to present consumers. But I want all people to recognize this, because I've been dealing with this issue. I've seen what Realtor.com's trying to do. I've seen Zillow. I've seen what Open Door and Purple Bricks and all of them are doing. For the majority of these players, and Zillow is no exception because they told me this, it's really a lead generator. Most people turn down the iBuyer offer because it's below market in most cases, because Zillow is going to turn around and put it in Zillow Homes and put it back up for sale. So they got to cover their spread. So what they do is when the consumer turns around and says, well, that's ridiculous, I can make more money and pay less if I have a traditional sale. By the way, I don't want to lose this sight. They also charge an administrative fee of anywhere from 7 to 10%. So that's higher than most commission programs that are out there. So the consumer will pay dearly for a lower price, et cetera. So as soon as the consumer says, no, I am not interested in that iBuyer solution, Zillow turns around and says, I've got plenty of people that I can refer to you, hence their Zillow Premier realtors that we can refer you to. And I expect they'll probably take a nice hefty referral fee out of that, even more so if they're doing that. So that's really what they're doing. How does it affect the real estate industry? It feels a little bit like what Redfin's doing. It feels a little bit like with what, in terms of paying some people to do different tasks. It feels a little bit with what Amazon has talked about that they're doing. I think it comes down to us, again, showing our professionalism that we can actually outsell that model because consumers want more powerful representation and someone who's going to who'll take them and their property and make sure that it is marketed the best way. So I will never say don't trust anybody. I think they have bigger plans. We can all speculate what that is, but I'm sure that they're going to use this to flag wave that they're realtor friendly because the people doing the transactions are realtors. And we can all make our decisions as to what we think that really means at the end of the day. So Holly, I wouldn't expect that you're going to suddenly get like 500 new members joining because they're Zillow broker. I don't see that happen.
Okay. All right. I'll let you know if that happens.
Okay.
Well, good. I think we covered so much here, Bob. I'm going to leave you with one more. So looking to the future, what do you think some of the biggest challenges are that we face in the next 2 years or so, and how do we deal with them?
Yeah, this is going to sound like the proverbial leader's answer, because I look at challenges as opportunities and silver linings. The biggest challenge we all face is lack of inventory. That's a problem. Builders cannot keep up with the demand. They're not willing to take more risk because they've gotten burned before. There's regulatory problems in local markets where local municipalities make it really difficult for builders to build affordable housing. So therefore, when they build, they decide to buy the land and their development and charge higher amounts of money. I think that is the pressure that we're going to face. Lawrence Yun, Dr. Yun, who is my chief economist and a phenomenal forecaster, sees that the market's going to still stay hot in this. It's just, again, the lack of inventory and supply. Interest rates are going to still stay favorable in that respect. So I think what it is that we're going to have to continue to push as best that we can. I think it's a great opportunity for our members to adapt new technologies and what it is that they're working on. I think that's imperative to stay up because the consumer will expect it. At the end of the day, this is a consumer game. And consumers will look at it and say, which of the practitioners in this industry can best market my property using technologies? You have consumers, depending on how long this terrible pandemic lasts, will say, I don't want people traipsing through my house. So what are the tools you're going to use to help market my home, et cetera? So I think it's the same kinds of things that have been out there. There will be other people that will try to come in and disrupt this industry. It's a multi-trillion-dollar business. So we need to keep doing the things that we're doing, which is expanding partnerships, bringing new technologies at the NAR level, working with our states and locals. I created a group from a staff perspective 3 years ago called our Emerging Technology Group, whose job it is to partner with major players. We've been talking and engaging with the major FANG players. Now, many of you are like, who are the FANG players? It's F-A-A-N-G. F for Facebook, A for Apple, A for Amazon, N for, who's the N? Netflix and Google. Thank you. See, Alexa, that was strictly a test to see if you would step up and say,
they don't call me Alexa for no reason. Ask Alexa any questions you have.
So we've been talking to all those companies and others. We've been talking to companies all through Europe, one of the biggest blockchain companies in the world. We need to find ways to bring them under our tent to say, you will do better playing within the tent with organized real estate, because they're going to do it with or without us. So the way you do it is invite them in and get them to play under the rules of our sandbox, instead of doing what I think we did many years ago, which is we puffed our chest out and said, we're the big bag 800-pound gorilla. And so what do people like Zillow do and others like them? And I'm not bad-mouthing Zillow. They did exactly what they should do. And NAR was like, we're not going to work with people called whatever that Zillow thing is 10, 15 years ago. So they did their own thing. People will resort to doing what they got to do. I think it's better to bring them under the tent, always, have your intent up, making sure they're doing the right thing. But they should be able to play in the sandbox we as an industry have created. Organized real estate, because there's nothing more important than protecting the interest of our members, because our members are the best ones that protect the interests of consumers. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're all about. So I will close with this, Alexa, and I can certainly entertain any other questions anybody may have. My friend Kevin Sears said this to me during my interview, and it has stuck with me, and it really has. And he said, Bob, when you're CEO, don't forget this one thing, that every one of us wake up every day unemployed, you know, until the next transaction. We're unemployed. That hit me so hard because even though I've been in the industry 30 plus years, when you hear it that way, and yeah, we know our members are independent contractors, but I wanted my staff to understand what that feels like. So we put a program in place 3 years ago. It is a requirement of employment every year called the Day in the Life of a Realtor program. And that is we have our staff shadow and spend time with our practitioners in the field. They have to do things like take code of ethics, commitment to excellence, all of those different things that our members go through so they can understand what it's like, that what you all walk through every day. And if they understand that and feel that pain, because I always have said, you know, no good thing happens between contract and closing. Only bad stuff happens. I want our employees to understand this is the way life is. And that if they're not successful getting to closing, they didn't make any money. And so our staffs all through the industry respectively get a paycheck every 2 weeks. And I want our employees to convert that mindset that says, if I understand and are empathetic to what our members go through every day, they'll serve you better. They'll be there to listen to what you have to say, because that's why we all exist. Holly and her team, myself, the states associations, we're there to serve our members and to make sure we're listening. And we have a core value. Their number one core value is members first. And we will continue to look and make sure that we're serving our members the best way we can. My honor and privilege to be able to talk to you all and to our respective members. We're here to be a hand in partnership.
Thanks very much.
This has truly been an honor and a highlight of my real estate career in its 10th year. So thank you again for all that you do. And thank you so much for your time here today.